It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, Kansas history is preserved in the sculptures of this artist. We'll discover how it all began and how these three-dimensional works of art are designed to inspire Kansans for generations to come. Also, we'll visit a hotel for snakes where reptiles rule the roost. It's the talk of this small Kansas town. Then we'll bring you a more graceful and beautiful side of Kansas wildlife and a story about the monarch migration. I'm Sierra Scott. Those stories are queued up and ready to roll on this episode of Positively Kansas. History is recorded in all sorts of ways: books, photos, films, and the life-size sculptures of Babs Mellor. Chances are you've seen her statues of notable Kansans at various locations in Wichita. And now in her 90s, she's in the middle of another major sculpting project of historic significance. Chris Frank has the details.
In a northwest Wichita home,
well, this is my statuary hall.
Sculptor Babs Mellor shows part of her sculpting collection.
And this is the maquette for Cardinal Newman at Newman University.
This hallway connects her residence to her art studio she's used for years. Here, creating many of her most treasured statues, including this one of Winston Churchill. Mellor has lost count of how many statues, busts, and figurines she has.
Mary Elizabeth Leash, she started Hypatia Club, and her statue is down at Century 2.
Many of Mellor's statues are quite visible, in plain sight. Perhaps you've walked past them, like the Promise of America statue outside Century 2's concert hall. This statue depicts 15-year-old Ferris George Jabara immigrating to America from Lebanon. Jabara pulls all his belongings in a bag, determined to become a success here, which he did. This is the maquette, or miniature, for the Mary Elizabeth Lease statue. You'll find it outside Century 2. Lease was a political activist, lecturer, and writer in the late 1800s, early 1900s, living in Wichita at the time. Her political opponents would cross the street to avoid her and her sharp, opinionated, but not always informed tongue. However, her followers paid to fill auditoriums to hear her speak about populist politics, women's rights, and temperance. In a manner of speaking, life-size statues like this one get birthed in a sculptor's studio like this. Every Wednesday afternoon, Babs, short for Barbara, has some of her former students over to help work on a current project.
Our dear Babs leader over there says, "I got this little project that I'd kind of signed up for. Would you be interested?" Well, yeah. Well, this little project's going to be about a 6-year project, it sounds like, before the end of it. But anyway, we got started and on Lieutenant Bleckley.
That current project is bringing to life in a bronze statue form the likeness of Lieutenant Irwin Bleckley. For those who don't know Lieutenant Irwin Bleckley's story, let me give you the Cliff Notes. Bleckley was born and raised in Wichita. He was an artillery spotter and rear-seat gunner flying in a de Havilland DH-4 airplane in World War I. Lieutenant Bleckley and pilot Lieutenant Harold Gettler are credited with locating what was called the Lost Battalion. Lieutenants Gettler and Bleckley were shot down and killed by enemy German ground fire in the process. Both were posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Bleckley is a Wichita war hero few know about. The Bleckley Foundation is working to change that and get Wichita's only Aviation Medal of Honor recipient better known. On Positively Kansas, we've shown you several stories in recent years of the Foundation's work at recovering and restoring a de Havilland DH-4 airplane similar to the one Bleckley and Gettler flew in. Getting a life-size bronze statue is part of the plan for a Bleckley public display.
It's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
That's Babs in the background. She watches the work from the sidelines unless there's a need to step in or to simply make a comment.
Look, I'm supervising. This is a wonderful group of very talented sculptors.
She trusts their work. After all, they were her students at Mark Arts, where she taught for 47 years.
I absolutely have learned everything from Babs. I could sculpt a little by the time I made it to her class because I did mock-ups of parts of airplanes with clay, but I really took her class so I could learn the human figure.
These maquettes serve the purpose of giving the artists a smaller model of the life-size sculpture they are working towards. But also, the maquettes will be used to help raise the funds needed to pay for the life-size version.
We basically have 3 different sizes, and there's 10 of each. And then when somebody donates a certain amount, they will be given a maquette of their choice. So they'll have a little one for certain mounts and a bigger one for big mounts.
The estimated overall cost is $40,000, even with the artists, including Mellor, donating their time.
This is going to be the full-size head, and then we will make a body for it later.
Kane works on this bust while the others finish up their maquettes. The artists work from photos of Bleckley. There is also a standing life-size cutout of the lieutenant the sculptors draw inspiration from. But these are all front-facing, one-dimensional photos. The artists lament not being able to see other sides of Bleckley.
And I like it. I like the 3D aspect of it. And it's very hard to work from a picture like we're doing here because you can't see the side view and the top view, what he looks like all around. So it makes it difficult when you're just working from pictures.
But the artists had an idea to overcome their one-dimensional dilemma. On March 4th, 2023, a ceremony was held at the Kansas Aviation Museum. It was the 100th anniversary of Lieutenant Bleckley's parents receiving the Lieutenant's Medal of Honor. On March 4th, 1923, 5,000 turned out at the Wichita Forum to celebrate and remember the Wichita hero who died in battle. Here, 100 years later, Lieutenant Bleckley's great-nephew, Michael Irwin, was keynote speaker at this ceremony.
I'm Michael Irwin. Irwin Bleckley is my great-uncle. To be more specific, he is my mother's uncle.
The artists took lots of photos of this Bleckley relative's head while Michael Irwin was here. They figured there could be a resemblance which could help the artists be more accurate in their sculpting. Mellor says it's critical for the artists to know all they can about their subject.
I really think to get the feeling of, and the likeness and the mood of the statue, you need to know everything you can about the statue. Like on Lieutenant Bleckley, we know that he was determined.
Getting pretty close to being finished with this. So I'm just trying to clean up the places that need to be cleaned up.
So we're putting a determined look on his face.
So there's lots of little minute details to do right at the moment.
Because he said we're going to find this lost battalion or die trying, which they did die trying.
Another statue of Mellor's that's visible in plain sight is the Carrie Nation statue outside the Eaton Hotel in downtown Wichita at Douglas and St. Francis. This is where Nation infamously vandalized a saloon with her hatchet. Her anti-alcohol temperance protest cost several thousands of dollars in damage, landing her in jail.
And when I first sculpted her, I made her look a little too harsh because I'd been reading biographies about her written by men in the East.
Mellor says those earlier men-written biographies of Nation characterized the prohibitionists bitterly cruel.
So they wrote harsh biographies about Carrie.
Mellor says she learned about the generous, benevolent side of Carrie Nation in a visit to the Carrie Nation Museum and home in Medicine Lodge.
So I came back to my studio, and you can see over there in the corner, I softened the face. I made her not as harsh.
And that softer image is captured in the Carrie Nation statue. Nation made a point of being photographed with her hatchet in one hand and her open Bible in the other. This is the earlier maquette Mellor did of Carrie Nation before Mellor learned about Nation's benevolent work.
And see how much softer she is now? She's much softer now. Determined, though, very determined.
Babs is very determined herself to get the most accurate image of a subject in her sculptures. She's come a long way since her childhood days on the family farm between Wichita and Valley Center. There, she did her first sculpting by playing in the clay mud.
Well, I've sculpted all my life. See, but after every trip, I love to sculpt something I saw on the trip as my souvenir. I could hardly say the words because I cannot believe I'm this old, but I'm 94. I can't believe it myself.
Her age is a factor in approaching the Bleckley project.
And really, I thought, because this will take several years before we get the big bronze done, and I said, I really need younger people with me on this project.
And at 94, it is easier to surround yourself with younger artists.
I've had a wonderful life.
A sculptor's work will outlive them. And in the decades to come, Babs Mellor's work will be seen and marveled at for generations to come. For Positively Kansas, this is Chris Frank reporting.
You can find Mellor's statues on public display not only in Wichita, but in Newton, El Dorado, and Hutchinson. Several more are in private collections. The thought of having snakes in a home is pretty scary to most people, but in the tiny town of Burns, an animal-loving couple is turning one of their Butler County houses into a reptilium, or reptile house, to display snakes and other reptiles. As Chris Frank shows us, what started out as a hobby is turning into a nonprofit educational outreach.
Feel how rough he is up here? Yeah? Now look on the bottom. Hey, touch him on the bottom. Feel how smooth that is.
Touch him by the head.
These Peabody children are getting a chance to get close and personal with snakes, lizards, and tortoises.
You want to touch him by the head?
Yes, I will.
Some children have no fear touching this Japanese rat snake by the head, while others, at least at first, recoil with revulsion at the thought of petting the snake. What do you think of the snake?
Nasty. Disgusting. Ew. Why? Why me?
9-year-old Alexa Dutton wants nothing to do with the snakes or other reptiles here.
Sure you don't want to touch it?
Delane Kellogg
Move his head out.
and his daughter Heavenly brought several snakes and other reptiles to this Peabody daycare. These children are on school spring break, but they are still learning from this hands-on, up-close, educational and entertaining experience. Some of the kids have no fear of holding the snakes. Their confidence encourages others to join in.
This is a false water cobra.
And while many of the kids are becoming snake handlers, Alexa hides behind a friend while trying to muster up the courage to touch one of the ball pythons in front of her. The 9-year-old's fear of snakes may be a family trait passed down.
If my mom was here, she'd be running and screaming and crying for her life.
Alexa still needs some time to warm up to the snakes, which gives us time to learn about where these reptiles came from. The small farming and ranching community of Burns, also in Marion County, is home to about 232 people and dozens of snakes, lizards, frogs, and fish at the DZ's Spot Reptarium and Educational Center. So, welcome to what?
The Spot Reptarium and Educational Center.
The Kellogg's have given up much of their home to house all the enclosures for their reptiles. The family has taken care of reptiles here the past 5 years.
Right here we have 2 Pac-Man frogs.
Pac-Man frogs are commonly known as ornate horned frogs, native to South America. Their Pac-Man reference is from the old Pac-Man arcade game.
This one's an albino, and the other one's a chocolate.
Now check out how small this albino Pac-Man frog is.
When we got this one, it was the size of the chocolate. So, those should get as big as this one.
Delane and Deborah Kellogg started out as hobbyists. They owned a couple of snakes and started breeding pythons. Before long, the Kellogg's were taking in snakes other owners no longer wanted, and their collection grew.
But get a close-up of that eye, and you'll see why everybody thinks they're so beautiful.
This is a yellow leopard Amazon tree boa. Daughter Heavenly didn't like the new snakes in the house at first.
I was absolutely afraid of snakes when it first started.
She was terrified of them. You could get a worm and look at her with it, and she would take off. She would threaten you over it. And now she gets the big girls out.
The Kellogg's have a few ball pythons, said to be the most popular pet snake.
We try to name all of our snakes, or all of our animals. This one is an albino spot nose. We named her Buffy because she's blonde, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you know.
Her regular 5-day-a-week job is as an over-the-road trucker, crisscrossing the country when she's not taking care of the stinks and burns. The Kellogg's say many pet owners don't take into account how long these pet snakes can live.
That's how we end up with so many. Most people don't understand that they live for 30 years.
And that's why the Kellogg's collection of reptiles is growing. These reptiles aren't native to Kansas and will perish if an owner lets them loose.
I put a post every once in a while, you know, that if you can't take care of something, give us a call, we'll come get it, or take it to a reputable pet shop like Exotics. We got this one and the other one as rescues because if you can't take care of them, you know, and that people get tired of them, and they could die if you don't take care of them right. So some of them come here, and we use them as part of the educational program to show people, you know, why you have to pay attention, learn as much as you can about the animal that you want to get before you get it, and make sure you have everything to take care of at first.
As you can see, the Kellogg's have the reptarium in their house, but their goal is to build a new reptarium in an open lot right next to their house, flanked by gardens on both sides.
Our whole idea is like a circle of life type thing. The reason we're going to have the wildflower area with the gazebo and the ponds is because pollinators are very important to everybody's life.
The Kellogg's got 501c3 nonprofit status. They hope to get monetary grants and donations to build the new facility. They want it to also be an event venue site for social gatherings. The Kellogg's say some are fans of the reptarium here, some aren't.
Some of the people think that it's really cool. Some of the people not so much, because they don't understand.
What kind is this again?
A red-tailed boa.
So they will keep going out and showing their reptiles and hoping to win over the skeptics.
Yeah.
We can go to schools or daycares or any place and take animals with us to show them.
Meanwhile, back on spring break in Peabody, a couple of brave boys are shouldering a long, heavy python. They'll no doubt have stories to tell back at school and likely have a lifelong memory of this. What do you think of all that? How do you feel about all that snake being close to you?
Good. Good.
Is that all you can say? And though the boys don't have a lot to say in words, their actions speak volumes. Before long, the other children are joining in. And what's this? Alexa is actually petting it.
I don't want to touch it.
After this experience, these kids may be asking their parents, for pet snakes.
They really want one, but I don't want to take care of it.
And finally, the largest of their pythons gets out to mingle.
Yeah, she weighs about 120.
Oh, that's what I like.
These boys are taking every chance they can to handle the snakes. And later, our snake-shy Alexa got the courage up to actually hold a snake, even if it was just for a few seconds. You're warming up. It's okay.
Ew, no, it's not.
I feed her.
Good job, you tried.
And 5-year-old Maddie Pickens shows no fear as a snake handler.
I don't know the other one.
This can also be a lesson in peer pressure. Some of the children take to the snakes right away.
These are my favorite animals, though.
They handle them with ease, holding the smaller ones in their hands or letting them crawl with ease along their arms.
Ask after Graham.
Takes 3 or 4 people to handle.
And these children let this heavier python crawl along their shoulders with no reluctance or fear. The more reptile-shy children watch and learn from the others that nothing bad has happened. Before long, Alexa overcomes her fear of snakes. What do you think now?
I think I like this snake. And I kind of want to keep it, but my mom would scream no.
It can take time to warm up to what's unfamiliar.
Did you learn anything? That's the most important part. Did you learn?
And that time may be what's needed for the Kellogg's to make their Circle of Life Education Center come true.
Yeah, she's very nice, very docile.
In Marion County,
Oh, I don't like this.
this is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
As a registered nonprofit, the Kellogg's are accepting donations and seeking grants to establish their reptile houses. If butterflies are more your thing, here you go. In this week's Kansas Wild Edge, Mike Blair covers the monarch migration.
Butterflies are among the gentlest and most loved wildlife, and among them, monarchs are perhaps best recognized. Striking coloration and relative abundance make them popular sightings in flower gardens and city parks. Even most children know them by name. But these orange flyers are unique for amazing annual migrations that carry them over thousands of miles to a hideaway winter home in Mexico. And late September finds them silently passing, sometimes in great numbers, sometimes alone, as they heed a primal calling to ensure the next generation in the coming spring. Most monarchs live only about a month as adults. Starting as eggs laid on milkweed, they pass through a series of larval growth spurts that finally lead to a beautiful green chrysalis. Then they hatch into adult flyers that feed, mate, and lay more eggs as they move steadily northward. They die to be replaced by their young. During summer, 4 generations hatch and repeat, finally reaching southern Canada in the last generation. These last monarchs emerge in late summer, but they're different from their parents. Instead of mating and soon dying, these live for 6 to 8 months with a built-in instinct to fly south for up to 3,000 miles to their winter home. Then in early spring, they head north and produce the first generation to start things over again. Southbound monarchs call little attention, but they're fascinating to watch. Flight speed is slow, normally less than 12 miles per hour and close to the ground, with stops to feed on flowers along the way. The favorable north winds can aid their efforts, and on such breezes, the monarchs may fly high and fast. The longest known flight of a tagged monarch in one day is 265 miles. They don't fly at night, and late afternoon or in rainy weather, they sometimes settle in large temporary roosts, attracted by scent pheromones released by resting monarchs. This can result in spectacular views when the orange butterflies assemble in numbers before separating and resuming their trips next morning. The monarch migration occurs in Kansas throughout late September and early October. Watch for it. You'll see the butterflies floating along, one here, one there, and all headed south. And you'll observe firsthand one of nature's most unexpected marathons by these small and fragile flyers. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Positively Kansas at kpts.org is our email address if you have a question or comment. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.